Okay, we're recording now. All right. So this is Misery Loves Company. We took a break last week because I had a break because I had a breakdown last week, but we are back on schedule now. So as usual, we're a weekly reading series that welcomes transgressive and outsider authors to come and read their work. Every Friday, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 5 p.m. Pacific. Yeah, all right, fuck it. Let's get started here. So first up is Forrest. Are you with us, Forrest?
Yeah, I'm here. Thank you, William. Yeah.
Hey, so you're going to be reading some poems that were published on Expat earlier this week, right?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I missed the first part of that, but there was some poems on Expat earlier this week. I heard that much.
Yeah, I just said that you were going to be reading some that were published earlier this week.
Okay.
Sorry, I'm hearing myself fed back to me again. I'm trying to say as little as possible here.
I'm so sorry. I'm assuming that you all can hear me now. I'll read the poems through hopefully under 5 minutes. Give me a sour face if something's the matter. It's okay.
I'm sorry, Forrest, you're really breaking up quite a bit.
This poem's called Our Litigious Society. We live in a very litigious society, and this is the price we must pay for free horse porn. Can I show you how to write DMT on jailhouse walls with poop as you regulate the gendering of bathrooms with an iron fist? No strangulation can withstand the law of an anti-abortion bomber. Football, hard drug, and girlfriend abuser. Now what are the Browns going to do for a quarterback next season? Let me ask you a question. Do you want to love me or do you want to eat me? You moron. What are you doing in jail? If you're going to do something stupid on the internet, do it before Friday so you don't spend the weekend in lockup waiting for the judge for 60 fucking hours. How come nobody remembers snafe babies but me? Did someone in my junior high school just make up that word, snafe? It refers to a method of conceiving child involving a straw, semen, and the butthole of a sex worker who trades in crack cocaine. I guess it could be that the term crack whore is just not as popular today as it once was. This one doesn't have a title, but it's kind of nice. So, believe it or not, it's very clear to me that the avoidance of all things wet has helped keep my emotions more stable. It must be easy for clouds to find the void. All they have to do is rain. And this next poem, actually, I wrote it. I want to tell you a story, but not too much story. I wrote it while I was tutoring a young lady who I thought was probably much better at poetry than me, and she was in high school, and she came to me with like these fascinating theories about William Shakespeare, and I just had no idea what was going on because I had obliterated myself for several days. And then she appeared with, after I kind of like faded into the background, she appeared with William Carlos Williams, and I was vaguely familiar. But I still felt like there was something missing. And so I just combined my last few days with her experience of William Carlos Williams, and we have a few days in Jersey. Dr. Kiki Carlos Williams, after days on end injecting himself from his big leather doctor's bag with pharmaceutical grade amphetamines, speculating, what if Elsie grew a dick? Became so hungry, he ate the stones stuffed with a speculum deep inside his belly. As he thought to himself, that deer in the yard eating goldenrod is an idiot. I have one more, and this is sincere. The sudden and glorious spring. God, I love the spring because I grew up in the country, and I don't know what to say about that, but it is, the title is sincere, a sudden and glorious spring. A flight of pigeons burst from the ground in front of my face. Craig could go to jail for a long time this time. I just returned from Cuba. New York needs more communism and jazz. Angel has been at her mom's place for a month and has not responded since last week. Sometimes psychosis comes and goes in plateaus. Unless you think it's better that we cut things off completely, you should try to get in touch. Kiss me again in the whispers of tulips and daffodils floating through the morning sun. Because by the time May rolls around, with a climate like dark seas of the boiling apocalypse, skipping spring for global warming, maybe I'll have blocked your number. You won't go to heaven, I won't go to heaven, we won't go to heaven, and I won't see you there.
That was fantastic. Thank you so much for it.
That was fantastic.
Do you mind muting your mic just quickly, because I hear myself being fed back, and I wanted to say how much I liked your poems, but I don't want to hear myself say it. But no, that last stanza, the "you won't go to heaven, I won't go to heaven" stanza, that hits so fucking hard, and I love how these poems are like just wonderfully balanced between like moments of really profound beauty and moments of just like batshit pop culture insanity. I don't know how else to put it. Like the synthesis here of really absurd, dark shit and really profound, beautiful shit is wonderful, and I really, really love these poems. Thank you so much for reading for us. Next up is Unity. You're up next.
Hi, everyone. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah, clearly.
Okay, great. I'm going to turn off my video. There's a photograph that goes with this piece, which I placed as my profile pic. And that will be helpful too, because you can't really see me anyway. How we looked together. It was how we looked together. Our two angelic faces framed by the beautiful blue Chicago sky. The first 6 months I took hormones, I was frumpy and ridiculous looking. I didn't know anything about makeup or styling, and I made the horrible mistake of getting bangs right off the bat. I had a girlfriend, Vivica, a member of the sad puppy dog underclass of trans lesbians who exist mainly online, in video game universes and message boards, watching children's cartoons, smoking thousands of cigarettes and smushing out the butts on the windowsills. Our life together consisted of Pokemon cards, cats, turbo-sized Monster energy drinks, thousands of lunches and dinners together at Burger King. I would use my grad school stipend money to buy a few packs of non-menthol Newport Hundreds, a bottle of Jim Beam, an eighth of weed, and a sack of those extra long, mayonnaise-laden 2-for-4 chicken sandwiches and cheeseburgers. And we would hang out in the basement of that one trans lady's house, Greta, I think her name was, playing around on the drum set and guitars and pretending it was band practice, until eventually all the other sad trans girl lesbians from around the neighborhood would begin to trickle in, and we would sit around getting drunk and high and shooting the shit, talking about how unfair everything was and how much we hated everybody, and wondering why our lives sucked so bad. Then all at once I started commanding the attention of hot guys. Really hot guys. Like fucking hot guys, I mean. A hotter class of guy by far than I had ever attracted as a boy. Sculpted, dreamy, big-dicked guys who spent every waking hour of every day of their lives dreaming about or chasing after girls just like me. Hot guys would catcall me on the street and try to talk to me at bus stops and train stations, many of them unaware I wasn't even female. Grindr became a whole other country. I'd get dozens of messages a day from prospective hot guy suitors trying to entice me into their beds with professional-seeming erotic photographs displaying six-packs, chiseled biceps, smooth, godlike 9-inch dongs, and virile masculine butt cheeks. Cheeks that promised hours of athletic, vigorous pumping and delivered on that promise every time. It was too insane. It was glorious. I basked in it. I realized that guys had to put a lot of effort into their personal appearance if they wanted to meet and spend time with the hottest trans girls, especially if they weren't prepared to offer any financial compensation for the privilege. It was a totally different sexual economy than the one for gay guys, where almost anybody can find someone at a similar attractiveness level to hook up with, simply by heading to a bar or logging onto one of the apps. The scarcity factor among hot, non-lesbian trans girls leads to some incredibly fierce online competition among the ostensibly heterosexual dudes who want to bang them. The Grindr bios of some of these men read like prospective backstage concert riders, with long lists of enticements available to sweeten the deal. Things like weed, food, Grey Goose on deck, 12 inches, we'll send Uber both ways. I got marriage proposals, pimp proposals, offers of free housing, promises of trips to various American and international destinations, free food delivery, free drinks, job offers, any drug you can imagine, dinners, lunches, resume help, offers to photograph and paint me. The list was endless. It's hard to pinpoint whether I got hot first and then started attracting hot guys, or if the hot guys could sense my own incipient hotness as it slowly began to awaken, causing me to become hotter as a response to all the newfound attention I was receiving. More likely than not, it was a combination of both. In any case, I broke up with Vivica very soon into the first months of my hot girl summer. My feelings for you have changed, I said, one afternoon before band practice. Yeah, she replied, sucking on a Newport. I figured they would. Adak was one of the first hot guys to hit me up on the apps, and he soon became a pivotal figure in me realizing and growing into my own emergent hotness. I need you next to me, Mama, when I walk up in that club, he said in his first message to me. We'd look so good together, you on my arm. Everybody's heads will turn when we walk through that door. How could I have refused him with a hook like that? Adak was young, only 21 when we met, and achingly beautiful. He had a mysterious, sexy backstory, something about his parents not wanting him anymore, or him running away from home after his parents had him institutionalized for some unspecified mental illness. He'd come to America as a teenager with an older gay couple who vacationed in Managua, I guess, and then he'd become a citizen maybe by getting adopted by the older couple, or maybe not. I honestly don't know which parts of the story were true or not, or if any of it was. The whole thing was all very vague and Tennessee Williamsy. When I met him, he was living with another gay couple, Rocky and Johnny B., both military veterans who moved around a lot, constantly changing cities, running away from God knows what. One of them was always exercising on a Stairmaster when I went over there, a beer in one hand and a joint in the other. He, Rocky or Johnny B., I can't remember which, was always kind and welcoming when I visited, offering Tupperware containers filled with reheated frozen meatloaf and mashed potato dinners and telling me about the books he was writing, which involved UFO abductions and conspiracy theories. Johnny B. and Rocky tried to set Adak up with a job at the Vienna Beef hot dog factory store and cafe in Bucktown, where one of their friends was the manager, but he'd gotten fired for tardiness or poor work ethic or something. Adak had no hustle whatsoever, no drive, few interests, and even less interest in pursuing those that he had. He was attractive and charming enough to weave his way into the fabric of people's lives and homes, and then he would just sit there, high or drunk or coming down or all three, watching cartoons or playing his video game or shivering under the covers and weeping. I don't know what it was about him that made him so alluring, so addictive. He was bad, yes, but it was more than that. More that he made bad look so beautiful. There was an innocence behind all the chaos, a sweet little kid hidden inside the madness. That's the thing about bad boys. Their appeal lies in that suspended adolescence, that Peter Pan shit, that interplay between nihilism and naivete. He had all these grandiose plans. He talked me up, praised my singing, my talent, my face. He said I could be famous if I wanted. He said we'd fuck up the world together, and it was so easy to believe him, especially with him sliding tabs of acid under my tongue, stuffing joints in my mouth, putting powders under my nose and shooting poisons into my veins. It was us against the world. It was never growing up. This is so fun, I remember thinking. I'm like Oliver Twist, and he's the Artful Dodger. I was reading a lot of Dickens at the time for my comprehensive exams, which I kept putting off and never actually ended up taking. Oops. Setting aside the fact that Oliver is a pure, perfectly Christ-like specimen of sinless orphanhood, whereas I was a bipolar, weed-addled, newly transsexual, alcoholic fuck-up who'd stopped showing up to work meetings and classes while still accepting the $7,000 checks my university's humanities division continued to lob in my direction quarter after quarter, the analogy wasn't bad. The Artful Dodger introduces Oliver to a life of crime, the teeming underbelly of thieves, whores, and urchins lurking on society's fringes. Adak was like that for me. He opened my eyes to this new world, its beauties and horrors, introducing me to countless poor souls struggling through life on the street, many from necessity, sure, but others like me, like a surprising number of people we met, maybe even like Adak himself, out of some psychological or spiritual need to break free from something we couldn't quite place or name, but which we were all of us caught in nonetheless. But sometimes it's when we struggle the hardest that we find ourselves least able to break free from the mysterious forces holding us in place. Sometimes the prison we're locked in is the prison our minds have created for us, the endless stream of chaotic thoughts, that boundless hunger, all the endless yearning for something beyond, something more, something different, just something, anything at all. The thing that's unrealistic about Oliver Twist is that Oliver never really breaks bad. Sure, there's the scene where he kicks the crap out of that douche nozzle Noah Claypole after Claypole insults Oliver's dead mother, but let's be real. Mother Teresa herself would have socked that little prick. In a more realistic story, Oliver would have started picking pockets for Fagin, pimping out little girls like Nancy, and smoking crack with the Artful Dodger like 7 pages into the book. Then the rest of the story would have been Oliver and the Artful Dodger getting high and fucking, then trying to outsmart and out-hustle one another. One of them would have become the other's pimp, and one of them would have OD'd or been murdered. They would have taken so many drugs that they began to share each other's psychotic delusions. They would have thought the lizard people were chasing them and gotten on a bus to Tennessee without telling anyone where they went. One of them would have alienated all her friends and terrified her family. One of them wouldn't have been able to stay out of jail. One of them would have detransitioned and gone to live in a mental hospital. One of them would have disappeared without a trace. They both would have gotten AIDS, passing toxic fluids back and forth between each other, each one daring the other to take that bigger hit, swallow that extra pill, snort that other line, hook up with that next sketchy trick, pushing each other harder, deeper, further over the edge, until they reach one of two inevitable outcomes, the freedom that comes with surrender or death. Dickens liked happy endings, though, and blameless protagonists. I can't say I'm the latter, and I can't promise any proper Victorian outcomes. I've been trying to find out what happened to Adak, but haven't had much luck so far. Our mutuals haven't heard from him. His profiles went dead, all at once, 2 years ago, in 2019. He was always afraid of being trapped, of dying alone. There are versions of this story I've told myself, and other people, where that happens definitively, times when it's easier for me to imagine that outcome, for the simple fact of the closure it would bring. But the truth is, I don't know. Would it be better for him if he were alive or dead? Would he be happier, one way or the other? All I can say is that I hope he's alive, and I hope that he's free. I hope he's not still struggling. I hope he's not in too much pain. Stand up straight, he told me. Walk with confidence. We were walking to Northerly Isle together from downtown Chicago. People stopped in their tracks and stared. You go out past the museum there and it's like you're in another world. There's beautiful flowering trees, gorgeous acres of green meadow. I remember a blue sky, fluffy white clouds. My stupid bangs had grown out, and I'd finally managed to produce a reasonably smoldering smoky eye. Still, I looked down at my feet, unable to meet the eyes of the inquisitive pedestrians who passed us, who I now realize didn't wish us any harm, but were just overwhelmed, unused to seeing so much beauty anywhere, let alone in two crazy kids walking next to one another in the street. Adak grabbed my phone and stuck his arm around my shoulder. He snapped a selfie of us, then turned the phone around. "Bitch, look at yourself," he said. "You're beautiful." And standing there next to him, I saw that I was.
Wow, goddamn. Speaking of beautiful, that was beautiful. I don't know if it's because of the mental state that I've been in for the past couple of weeks, but that hit me hard as a motherfucker, as they say. No, that was a really, really wonderful piece, Unity, and a really wonderful departure too. Very different from some of your past work, but really, really emotionally resonant, really powerful, and God, yeah, no, as I said, it hit me pretty damn hard. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Thank you, William.
Alexandrine, you're up next.
Okay, I don't know if I can follow that, but okay.
And you're going to be reading your piece from Expat 4, right?
Yes, the notorious now infamous Expat 4 of some renown. I will warn you, this is probably a 16-minute read, so if you have to pee, now's the time, or take a dump. But yeah, this one is called The Thin White Duke. Henshaw flipped to the voicemail on his phone and played the message from the day before. He'd listened to it about a dozen times already, not sure why he found it so unsettling, maybe because it was a new voice. He pressed play. The clipped voice spoke. "This message is for J117. 2 men will come collect you around 1900 hours tomorrow evening. Nothing bad, I promise." The voice had the slightest hint of a Southern accent, but not a real Southern accent, a South Carolina accent from a television show, which told Henshaw that it was fake. He was local to Southern Indiana, born right here in Abington, just across the river from Kentucky. He knew what a Southern accent sounded like. This new guy was putting it on for some reason, which was weird. Well, the thing about Henshaw's job, his real job, his day job, was he didn't care if he got fired or not. It didn't cost him much of anything to call in for the third time in 2 weeks. So he picked up the phone and dialed the dispatch office. The woman on the other end of the line, some fat Mexican bitch named Yolanda, she talked in a Cholo accent, even though she lived in Indiana. Henshaw would have preferred for her to speak Spanish. "What do you mean you can't come in?" she said. "You're sick again?" "Well, seeing as how we work in the medical field, it's not entirely unprecedented to learn that one of your employees has been stricken ill. You're an ambulance dispatcher, Henshaw. You're not exactly exposed on a regular basis. Nevertheless, I find myself quite incapacitated and I'm going to have to call in. I'm terribly sorry about this." For emphasis, he coughed gently into the phone. "Well, I don't know where your points are at, but they can't be good." Henshaw wrapped the extra long cell phone charging cord around his neck and pulled upwards ever so gently. He often contemplated suicide, not in any serious capacity, not in the sense that he had planned his, but in more of a casual, quickie sort of way, a thought experiment. He classified the different forms in their nobility. Hanging rested at the top, while wrist slitting sat at the bottom. Hanging was the gentleman's way to go, slightly dramatic, but not as much mess as a gunshot. Pills were a cry for help. Slicing wrists, one step from being emo and therefore associated with homosexuality. If anything, Henshaw was of the opinion that it was a pity the noose had such negative connotations in modern society. It made for a fine icon of fear and was a proper way to put a man to death. Say what you will about a lynching, but it surely beat being fried with electricity until you bit your tongue and shat yourself, or worse, suffering under hours of botched anesthesia. Not that Henshaw supported lynching. Blacks might be predisposed towards violence and crime, but they were men and deserved the rights to a trial. Only afterwards, when they were declared guilty by a court of their peers, should they be strung up by a gallows in accordance with their crimes. Besides, genes didn't make any one person more inclined towards criminality. Rather, criminality soaked everything in the modern age. Violence, once organized and civilized in the nearly exclusive purview of elected officials, had gone freelance, wildcat, become a sickness passed through media and from man to man with little rhyme or reason. It wasn't exclusively the fault of Black youth that they were a bunch of violent little bastards. They'd been honed that way, the savagery of their home continent distilled and recontextualized into casual horror visited upon unsuspecting masses. Plenty of Black people, and Mexicans too, were perfectly normal, God-fearing types, as far as Henshaw could tell from his semi-regular sojourns into his church of choice. The fascists and their anti-Jewish paranoia were an example of blaming sinner for sin and not placing the blame where it belonged, with the lies which gurgled out of the pit. "Are you there?" asked Yolanda. Henshaw tightened the makeshift knot even further. "Yes, Yolanda," he said, ever so slightly strangled, "but I really am ill and must be going. Ta." He hung up the phone and let the cord loosen. The place where it cut into his neck burned slightly. As a former Marine, Henshaw was of the opinion that the appropriate way to put him to death was by shooting. Were it his time to go, were he found guilty of a crime against this fine nation he loved so dearly, he would hope, beg for the judge to have the decency to arrange a detail of 7 men, equip them with rifles, and place him in front of them, blindfolded, so he could end his days upon the earth as a fighting man, pierced by a bullet to the heart. It would never go like that. He could never be that fortunate. The age of heroes had left Henshaw long behind. Henshaw, the big meat wall, 350 if he was a pound, 6'10", more muscle than was immediately apparent, built for some Roman gladiator arena or Scottish battlefield, wielding local metal against the machinations of the English. He'd nursed fantasies of battle for much of his life, and somehow, when he deployed to Iraq, he'd spent all his time sitting on a 50 cal he shot 3 times. Really, the court-martial and accompanying less than honorable discharge had been the fault of boredom more than anything. Maybe if he wasn't bored, he wouldn't have gotten so drunk and swung on that CO. Now his weapon stood in the closet, unused except for target practice. He'd thought many times of trying to join some local patriot organization, some militia that was concerned with survivalism, but the reality is that such organizations had too many politics. The fighting was the thing. Being prepared for calamity was an end in itself. To fight for something, anything more than base survival, was an affectation of pseudo-intellectuals. What ideals he had, freedom and honor mostly, transcended the machinations of statesmen who obfuscated the simple realities in order to valorize themselves without having earned valor. Henshaw, he saw himself as a libertarian, for lack of a better term. Mostly he just wanted to be left alone, and if capitalism was the best system he had, well, even better. His patriotism didn't wane for being kicked out of the military. If anything, it redoubled itself in a bizarrely apolitical fashion. It was unfortunate that he had the black spot on his record, that he went through all the schooling to become an EMT, and all it had come to was a desk job, telling ambulances where to go so they could do the actual work. He truly believed that no one trusted him enough to send him out into the field where he belonged, even though he'd been assured many times that he still served an absolutely vital function and that he shouldn't be thought less of just because he wasn't doing the chest compressions himself. The sum total of all this was that he had become necessary for Henshaw to find another job to let his entrepreneurial American spirit fly, something in a related field where he could almost but not quite use his degree. It wasn't odd to be told he'd be collected, not anymore. It certainly had been the first few times he got a cryptic phone call with instructions that didn't have him do much but hurry up and wait. But after each and every one of those meetings had ended with a firm handshake and the assurance that he was doing an excellent job, he'd become accustomed to it. Besides, isn't that how every job was nowadays? Bullshit. Busy work that amounted to a lot of nothing but was meant to produce a facsimile of a hard day's work so as to satisfy the lizard brains of the once great men who worked them. His ancestors had laid railroad, mined coal, hewn trees, hunted and forged, and quite literally built this country with their bare hands. And now their son was stuck sitting on his ass all day, filling out paperwork and telling cars where to go. Well, that and the other job. Henshaw bent down and pulled a lockbox from under his bed. He opened it with a key from the carabiner that never left his belt and revealed a .38 revolver in another smaller box, navy blue and white and cardboard, that read Parker Pilgrim Pilot Program. Inside was 2 pill bottles, 1 empty, a bunch of blister packs of small blue pills, and about $8,000 in cash. A sticker on the inner lid read J117. He pulled out 2 blister packs in the .38 and stashed the rest of the stuff in the lockbox. He checked his watch. 1740 hours. Not a whole hell of a lot of time, but enough to pull a drop real quick. Henshaw pushed the box back under his bed, left his room, and locked the door. He owned the home, not outright, of course, but he had a mortgage payment instead of rent. He could make the payments with his dispatch job, but the down payment had come from his participation in the direct sales pilot program. He was a natural salesman, and the rich kids he considered his bread and butter would pay his higher console fee, no questions asked, for the veneer of legitimacy, instead of buying pressed junk from the low-life dealer with a face tattoo named Jamal or Pedro. He turned down the hall into the living room and stopped short. On the couch sat his roommate and tenant, Kyle. Long, shapely legs clad in black spandex draped one over the other, a lacy blouse that was almost see-through, floppy, chemically treated hair draped over his left eye. The fag was staring at his hands, an empty pill bottle on the table in front of him. It had been pity that led Henshaw to share his stock with this boy, his best customer if only he paid on time. The fag had a taste for the little blue pills, Dresden all as they were called. He'd come to live with Henshaw on the ward of his best friend. Otherwise, there was no way that Henshaw would have allowed a mulatto homosexual with loose morals to take up residence in his home. It seemed the poor fuck was fleeing from some kind of miserable situation and had been recently harmed in some profound way, and all he really needed was a warm bed and the occasional handful of pharmacological rapture. The fag looked up at Henshaw and smiled. "And where are you off to, dear?" he lilted. His southern accent was rougher and therefore genuine. Henshaw swallowed. The fact that he liked to drink shouldn't have caused so many complications in his life, but it did. It wasn't his fault the fag had a warm mouth and looked like a girl, but it was his fault for giving in during inebriated nights of fumbling, each groping the other by dint of proximity and chemicals. Fuck, looking like that, you have to be gay not to get a half chub on. He sat down in the recliner diagonally from the fag. "You're late on rent." Kyle made a circular motion with his limp wrist. "And yet I continue to dwell here." Irritation shot through Henshaw's loins. This was why he hated dealing with homosexuals. All of them were unreliable, untrustworthy, or both. Even the one homosexual in his squad had been the laziest, most annoying guy he met in the entire organization. This one was no exception. The only reason he allowed him to stay was why, exactly? A voice whispered the truth to Henshaw, but he tamped it back down where it belonged. "You're going to be dwelling in a box on the street. You don't pay me for rent. And that's not mentioning all the pills you've taken and no consult fee." Kyle laughed. "Is that what you call it? A consult fee? My God, how clinical." Henshaw stared with hatred. The words escaped him before he could stop them. "Then you better find some other way to pay." The fag raised his eyebrows. "How forward, Shaw?" It wasn't that he didn't know he wanted Kyle. He already rationalized it to himself in every possible way, that it wasn't against his programming to desire someone who appeared feminine, but rather against the fag's programming to appear feminine. Here the decadence of modernity had conspired against the natural state of man. He admitted that it was a weakness of his, no doubt born from alienation. He didn't want to want Kyle. It was something he had to deal with or reconcile. Regardless of the fag's own nature as a manifestation of contemporary sloth, it seemed arguable that some homosexuals were turned that way irrespective of will, an aspect of nature at war with itself. "That's not what I meant. I'm down. What are you doing tonight?" "What? Maybe tomorrow night too? I don't know how many I took." "Look, asshole, I need money. I have a mortgage. Do you hear me? I need you to pay me." In one fluid motion, Kyle pulled himself into Henshaw's lap and planted a kiss on his cheek. "I'll wear something nice." Henshaw balled his fist. His first instinct was to beat the shit out of the fag, kick him until blood and glitter stained the rug, but he controlled himself, took a breath. Physical violence wouldn't solve anything, wouldn't bring the money to him any faster. What he really needed to do was kick the fag out, but something kept stopping him. Again, it was pity for the less fortunate, for the lower sorts of people. After all, they couldn't help themselves. Rich Kid popped 3 of the little blue pills out of the blister pack onto a streaky square of mirror. He picked up a half-full bottle of craft beer and gently crushed the pills with a thick glass base until a coarse, whitish robin's egg powder formed. He pulled out a Platinum American Express card, then thinking better, pulled out his student ID instead. He scraped the powder into a small pile, laid the card on top, and applied pressure bit by bit, milling the pills into a finer grain for easier insufflation. Finally, he cut the powder into 2 neat equilateral lines, pulled a crisp 20 out of his wallet, rolled it into a tube, and applied the end first one line, then the other, inhaling as he did so. He leant back onto the leather sofa, eyes closed, bridge of his nose pinched in his free hand. "Fuck," he said, "can't beat the real thing." As your certified Parker Pilgrim treatment navigator, I must once again inform you that Dresdenol is meant to be taken orally, and any other forms of ingestion may lead to adverse side effects up to and including overdose, Henshaw said. Rich Kid grinned, already fading. He produced 3 crisp $100 bills from his wallet and passed them to Henshaw. "Keep the change, Captain. You're my personal pleasure cruise navigator, that's for sure." "I don't get why y'all snort that shit." Rich Kid pointed a thumb over his shoulder. "Back pain. Injury from rowing crew. You know how it is." "Yeah, that's what they all say." Henshaw was barely older than Rich Kid, who shared this house with 3 other idiot college students. All were hardcore partiers, aficionados of sex and drugs, their degeneracy surely to a life of blown out drug addiction with the associated falls from grace and economic destruction. Except, of course, they would be insulated from the worst of it by their rich parents, who would ensure their passage into rehab facilities and convenient vacations from bullshit jobs that would still be there when they got back. Henshaw had no such reprieve and so did not partake of the semi-legitimate stash of painkillers and antidepressants provided by Parker Pilgrim Pharmaceuticals. The pills Rich Kid had just taken to the head, the blue disasters, Dresdenol, were ostensibly a non-addictive, non-narcotic alternative to OxyContin and hydrocodone, but taken in high enough doses with enough rapidity and maybe the aid of a little beer or pot, which Rich Kid was currently smoking a thin joint of extremely high-quality medical weed, they would produce their own soporific effect, less an opioid high and more of a psychedelic trip. The junkies, people like Kyle, they said it made their time run funny, backwards and forwards, slowed to hardened glass and sped to molten gold. I can see my old dog, man, said Rich Kid. He's right there with me. Fascinating, said Henshaw. Well, as much as I'd like to watch you trip out, I must be going now. Why are you such a square, man? I drink, I smoke, I have my own outlets. But you're too uptight. You're trying too hard. You gotta just let it be, man. They would have that outlook with all the luck they'd been given. Henshaw was certain their fathers would be ashamed to see their children turn to such deadbeats, lying around getting stoned and wasting time on art classes. Back in their day when things were right, a man had to work for a living. Whatever wealth these boys squandered, it would have come from honest labor and smart investments, not Instagram influencing and fake jobs. No, it would have been better to have been born in an era of war and strife, an era where strong men built and weak men perished. It was a shame and a monumental injustice that Henshaw was forced to live this, the life of a bug, skittering and foraging among the trash and shit for a way up, crawling on and above other bugs just as hungry as he was, fighting over scraps dropped by twisted and deformed shapes above. What an unending horror, what an inhumanity. He was very bored. There were two men standing by his car when he left Rich Kid's house. The beat-up Buick, a grandmother's asphalt vessel, was outshined by the new Lexuses and Mercedes parked along the street, and Henshaw felt a stab of fury and embarrassment that his rust bucket had been seen next to them. The two guys were big, not as big as Henshaw, but enough for him to take notice. They wore identical navy blue polos with white trim and American flag hats. Henshaw sized them up. He could take the one on the right easily. He had poor posture and was clearly attempting to puff himself up. The one on the left would be a harder target, but manageable nonetheless. In front of his car was parked a shiny new Chevrolet SUV. "We've come to collect you," said the man on the left. "You're early and not at my home. Did you follow me?" "Pipe down, chill out, bro," said the one on the right. "You're paranoid." He walked to the SUV and opened the passenger side rear door. "Get in. You're riding, bitch." Henshaw did as he was asked. Easier to follow instruction, and besides, he had the .38 strapped to his right leg under his worn-out but clean denim pants. A third man, smaller than the other two, but in an identical blue polo and baseball cap, drove the car. Comfort Eagle by Cake pounded on the stereo. The ride was uncomfortable, as to be expected for three large men wedged together into the back seat, even the back seat of a car as spacious as the SUV. There was a secondary psychological effect for Henshaw besides the obvious intimidation factor. There was an undeniable sense of control that went deeper than the simple threat of violence. It occurred to him that these guys wouldn't raise a finger against him unless someone, an unseen force, ordered them to. It was a sensation that he hadn't felt since his time in the military and put him inexplicably at ease despite the unknown resting ahead of him. They took him to a sagging mansion outside of town, an early form of the McMansions built on former farmlands, all red brick and disintegrating roof. The driveway from the country road up to the garage was in poor form, and Henshaw had a wild sense that whoever lived or used this place was squatting while the owners were away for years on some forsaken errand. His head hit the roof of the SUV more than once on the way up. The front door was guarded by two guys who wore flak jackets over their blue polos. Glocks hung on their belts. Henshaw's three guards disembarked and guided him inside. The interior was in far better condition than the overgrown landscaping and cracked light fixtures would have indicated. They led him through a slightly cramped foyer and through a woefully out-of-date kitchen to a table at which sat the owner of the voice on Henshaw's phone. A skinny white guy in a black suit, white shirt, no tie. His volatile blonde hair was slicked back against his skull, and one of his pale gray eyes was noticeably darker than the other. It was apparent to Henshaw, without any need for words or even body language, that this man was infinitely more dangerous than the other guys in blue polos all around the room. Henshaw extended a hand. "Pleasure to meet you, sir." The man's eyes flicked down to Henshaw's right pant leg. Quicker than he could respond, one of the guards reached down and unstrapped the .38 from his leg. "No need for that around here," said the pale man. He reached out and took Henshaw's hand. "Name is Reardon. Have a seat." Henshaw took a seat across from Reardon. His bottom hung over the sides a bit more than he was accustomed to, and he thought for a moment that maybe it had been intentional to give him a smaller chair. "So," said Reardon, "you've been doing excellent work for the company thus far." His soft southern drawl was even more ridiculous and even more dangerous in person than it had been over the phone. "I'd like to think so," said Henshaw. Reardon nodded. "I'd rather not lie to you. I'm not here in an entirely official capacity. While the company knows that I am here, they do not know that the fine fellows you've made the acquaintance of have accompanied me to this location." The Parker Pilgrim guys that Henshaw was used to were all sales types, middle-aged dudes in too tight, ill-fitting button-ups and jeans. They would drop off a new box of product and give him a slap on the back, and that was that. All was well, nothing to see here. Reardon was too young and too well put together. Do you even work for Parker Pilgrim? Reardon chuckled. I can imagine that I'm not quite what you're used to. I work in the compliance department, you see. My role is a little bit more, how do you say, abstract than a pilot program area captain, those salesmen you're so used to. I'm rather interested in making sure that everything which happens within the purview of the organization is to the benefit of my employer. That means I, at times, embark on independent projects. So why are you with these guys? Well, I suppose part of why I'm here is to enlighten you. My employer is in the habit of making certain, let's say, charitable donations to civic-minded organizations like these fine, traditionally spirited young patriots you see around you right now. My job at the moment is to ensure that such an investment is put to good use. There are many purposes to which a nicely organized bunch of strapping young lads might be put to, and in this case, we are trying to see if we can't find a few of those. Violence or the threat thereof, placed with precision, can yield a great many favorable outcomes. I appreciate your concern, but I don't need muscle. I mean, I mostly consult with snobby rich college types. I'm intimidating enough as it is. These guys will just scare the piss out of them. A ripple of laughter went through the assembled polo shirts. The sound chilled Henshaw. Mr. Henshaw, let me assure you that having any of these boys accompany you on a consultation run is the furthest thing from my aim here tonight. No, I'm bringing you to them, not the other way around. I read your file. Yes, you have a file. And the fact of the matter is your talents have been somewhat wasted here. I think you can do more. I think we can diversify your responsibilities and really take advantage of your strengths. Reardon leaned forward. The overhead lamp gleamed off his scalp in the worst way. Do you like niggers, Mr. Henshaw? Here was the danger. No, not at all, Henshaw lied. What about faggots? Are you openly fond of faggots? Nope. Then why do you live with someone who is both of those things at once? Henshaw started to protest, to say Kyle paid the rent, before realizing that no, Kyle did not pay the rent, not in any real way. Do you like Mexicans? No. Then why do you take orders from one? Don't answer. I don't care either way. Personally, I'm ambivalent to all of them, as most people are simply a cut below, unable to pass muster. It's not about what you are or where you come from. This is about the simplest, most efficient thing in the world, violence. We apply violence as needed where it's needed. Violence is an end in and of itself. It is the one thing that truly separates the worthy from those who are not. The trouble, Mr. Henshaw, the trouble that is breaking you apart is that we have removed the violence from everyday life. The purpose of my friends here is to bring it back. The arrayed polo shirts started to spread out. Henshaw could feel them moving around him, gaining vantage points, and his instincts began to charge. You don't know me, or are you people watching me? You're a fighter. Why should you be expected to languish under comfort when battle is your very nature? We just happen to understand you. Do you want to be like us? Do you want to bring violence back into the world to truly fight for your survival? Yes. The fists came from nowhere. It was impossible to know which of the polo shirts struck out first, but before long they were all on Henshaw. And even as he fought to stay upright, to lift himself to his feet, he couldn't drag himself out of the hailstorm coming down upon his person. They pounded him relentlessly without words or meaning or purpose. His face collided with the tile floor, and it occurred to him that he hadn't been in a house with a tile floor his whole life. The politicians and the communists are so concerned with ideology, they forget the most basic truth of life. The strongest live and the weakest die. You know which of these you are. You've known it all your life. I'm just here to reveal this greater truth. The blood from his broken nose pooled around the sides of his cheek. From his vantage point, he could see Reardon's perfect shiny loafers as he stood up and walked over to Henshaw. Triple X, is that correct? Something soft hit Henshaw's body. He twisted just enough to see that it was a navy blue polo shirt. A bottle of pills followed soon after. Come now, Mr. Henshaw, get up. You're one of us now. It was only after arriving on the front porch of his own home that Henshaw could even start to process what had happened to him. At least there were no guards sharing the back seat with him on the ride back to his car, just the driver, endlessly bumping Comfort Eagle by Cake. He clutched the polo shirt to his face to staunch the bleeding coming down from his nose. The pills sat in his back pocket. Henshaw had already opened the bottle, shaken two into his palm, and swallowed without any water. He figured that so long as he was using them for the intended purpose, there was no harm in it. The carabiner didn't want to unhook from his belt loop, but with a little bit of force, he managed to tear it off. He put the key in the door and turned and walked into the living room. Kyle sat in the recliner, his robe open. Except he wasn't just wearing a robe. He had on soft black sheer nylons and a garter belt and lace panties and a matching bra stuffed with fake tits and a sort of negligee corset thing and low-heeled slippers. He put on a bunch of makeup, and his hair was perfectly straightened and resting over his eyes, obscuring his face like a courtesan. Kyle looked him up and smiled. I figured since my housing was at stake, I should really go for it. But then his face fell into a look of shock and concern. He made a strangled noise and stood too fast, wobbling on the heels, and shuffled over to Henshaw. He hesitated only a moment before raising a hand and stroking Henshaw's cheek, still caked with his own blood. Oh my God, what happened to you? Henshaw said nothing, just stared. The fag disgusted him, a grotesque mockery of womanhood. Of course this is what he thought men wanted. And maybe they did. Maybe the fag was really a tranny, a hermaphrodite who copied what he saw in the porno movies. He raised his hand and placed it over Kyle's. Against his will, for no reason at all, he bent his face down to Kyle's mouth. They kissed briefly without fulfillment. He put a hand on the top of the fag's head and pushed him down, and of course the fag obliged, undoing his belt, dutifully beginning to suck his cock. It felt good. It didn't feel like much, but what it did feel like was good. They fucked in the fag's bedroom. Henshaw hadn't wanted to until Kyle had finished the blowjob and turned around to leave. But as soon as he saw the robe switched to the side and two tight little brown buns winked at him, a girl's ass, he had acquiesced. To what exactly he didn't know. But the fag had gotten down on all fours on the mattress on his floor and raised his hole into the air, which smelled surprisingly little. So Henshaw had rolled a condom onto his prick and grabbed hold of that almost girly ass and stuck it in with less resistance than he had expected. Again, the ways of the fag. It didn't take him long to come again. Part of it was the tightness and part of it was the furious speed at which he worked, but all he had to do was hold on to the tight little bod and pump away, and before he knew it, he felt himself let go. He rolled off and lay down on his back, blood still streaming down his nose, running down his chin. Some had gotten on Kyle's fancy lingerie, and he felt almost bad about it. Kyle reached over and put his head on Henshaw's chest. You don't have to tell me, but I'm here if you want to. Maybe it was the pills, but Henshaw thought back to the first time this had happened. Some drag queen from a bar, sometime when he was on leave. Only she hadn't been in drag that night. She'd looked like a man, but the alcohol had taken over and they'd wound up in this exact spot with the queen's head on his shoulder. And for just a moment, Henshaw felt happy. He felt that he could die like that, with a sort of man's head on his shoulder. Then, or maybe now, tears began to pour down Henshaw's face. They mixed with the blood and stained the pillowcase. And that's that.
That was fucking fantastic. It's such I don't know, it's such like a vicious deconstruction of noir, right? Like you know, I think I've said a million times how much I love unreliable narrators, and you've crafted a really brilliant one here. Like every one of those rationalizations is like pitch perfect because it like patently absurd when you're reading them, but yet like you could, I think all of us probably know people who think exactly like that and make exactly those kind of rationalizations to themselves. And just very vicious, very funny, just very good. Thank you, Alexandrine. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Thank you for reading, or listening rather, sorry. Jesus Christ.
Thank you. Rudy, oh shit. Oh no, Gabriel. I'm sorry. Gabriel's up next.
Okay, I'm gonna read like 4 or 5 poems from my I have a poetry book that just came out today called Unsongs Volume 1 on it's a publisher called Close to the Bone from England. Like I was saying before, they're a noir publisher that just kind of recently opened up into verse. So I'm chuffed to be part of their experiment here. This one is called Heroine with an E at the end. You finally called me your hero. Baby, I'm so glad that happened. Now please, can I rescue out of all those pretty clothes you're trapped in? Can you tell me who else hurt you? We'll make a list that burns as we go. As the road disappears behind the two of us, the horizon we overthrow. Do you need help cleaning house? I'll wipe the floor with any fool who tells us you're too young. Because if I don't have you, someone else will, but I'm the best fucking one. Because I'll let you get away with murder if you make my house your hideaway. You're not just my princess. You're the heiress to this curse. Now, save my life today. This one's called A Cure for Acne. The eclipsing teen careening to hemophilia. No one asked their permission to inherit the hide of dinosaurs. A falsely exalted, nostalgic continuum devours teen in shadow on all fours. The curtain will not open, so they sharpen up their prop, pointing the tool against them. My big bang stops here. Moving on. This is called Limelight Vigil. I denounce the Limelight Vigil, me bibulous, the perpetual ritual, Veiled in vapor and rancor's decor, hands grab eager, the mist morphs to dribble. Drops fall like flies, though still hungry to bite, lurk, resurrection. Like stanic channel hiss, till I find further nerve to backhand this abyss. This one's called When I Met Her in the Street. When I met her in the street, it was horizontally. I swear I saw her spirit escaping her body. No, get away, she said. Just let me sleep. Let's get you up, I pled. Don't fall asleep. Stay with me. Her eyes floated up into her head like two balloons. I shook her, stuttering that she would feel better soon. But then she spilled her guts. She showed me all her cuts, like ripping out a tooth to find the truth. An ambulance was out of the question, the way her eyebrows raised when I offered to call her parents. Because though she was a victim, they would say she had sinned. Because when you cross the cross, you have crossed your kin. She finally told me her whole name, but she looked at me like it was a mistake. She couldn't recall their names, just a white van, no windows, unmarked plates. I carried her into our home, keeping vigil with a vigilante tone, peering through blinds for a sign that justice might prevail. 4 nameless, medium-billed males, God Almighty, you failed. And moving on here. Be patient with me. Oh, this one's called Fear of Youth. I saw this coming from miles away. This, I'll preface this one. This is sort of about, realizing, basically, when you get old and you start having a fear of youth, like when you see a group of teenagers walking towards you, and then you kind of cross the street just because you know how horrible you were when you were their age. I saw this coming from miles away. Have my phobias manifested from all my past crimes up to date? The world, all theirs to annihilate, like it's some video game where nobody's got a name. Can we shove them right back up their parents' ass from which they came? I can't believe I'm saying this, but when I was their age, I knew a thing or two how to channel my rage. I would hurt myself before I dream of hurting someone else. My fear of youth has got me staying inside. My buddy could not get away. When he got shot in the back by a boy, only 18, my buddy died almost instantly. Blood trickled out his mouth. The boy bailed to border south. Now he'll never get to come back to his own childhood house. The zombie apocalypse is your own child. No concept of consequence, feral and wild. I'm afraid to see the day when they must care for you and me. A fear of youth, now there's nowhere to hide. Disconnected from history, they tell me to just chill out as the whole world goes up in flames. But I need a caretaker today to ensure this rope won't fray. Of this noose from which I sway, I've decided to let the meek inherit the earth today. Being groomed to lead the massive distraction, our youth now, every time they speak, will read as redaction. To every daughter and son, get the fuck off my lawn, my fear of youth, my shotgun at my side. This one's called Birth, War, and Everyday Bleeding. Well, I've never given birth, and I've never been to war, but I beat the shit out of one of my best friends. I'll never forget his face when he opened up the door. I made sure both his eyes got blackened. Anything not nailed down ended up broken on the floor as we tangoed in a blur of ultra-violence. He just kept screaming my name, trying to remind me who I was, while I squeezed his neck with both of my hands. The pressure made his face flush, as if the devil could blush, but I let go because he started crying. Now to the bar to catch a buzz, the woman saw the both of us. She was so in shock, she asked us what happened. I looked my friend dead in the eye, asking for help with my reply. I glared at her and said, "What do you think happened?" As she stood up out of her seat and she kissed me on the cheek, I swear to God, she started laughing. And I will leave you all with the first poem in the book. It's called Rising. born again as a demon in their own image, a lineage steeped in tradition, banished to darkness, their own shadows. Down here, I light the fires from my earned erudition. I've been tied to fishing line so they may dictate my ascension. Yet my boiling blood makes a fuse of their impotence. As sparks burn up the binds, I am free of condescension. There I rise with each light, these autonomous lanterns of true divinity, a demon's work never done, now in flight to encounter every holder of my infinity. Only once did I look back, anticipating flaps of my wings, but they retract, my rising propelled only from my guttural growling. Every opponent on a perch, like figurines of arrogance on display, as I move through each insignificance, their mouths wide open with nothing to say. Confirmation untouchable, transparency looming, the sun expanded as the exits, every gatekeeper of layer and infighting naysayer, convoluted, proving they no longer exist. Now see my silhouette against that ball of fire, your hell below, merely my chrysalis, your business, my pleasure, to be this demon, anything to be your antithesis. And that wraps it.
Those were fantastic, Gabriel. I love the way that you play with language in some of these, like, and the way you twist language, like the vigil with the vigilante tone one, like even like you can feel the, even I kind of wish I had them in front of me, but you can really like viscerally feel the line breaks there. And like another one, your use of horizontally in that, the When I Met You on the Street poem.
Oh yeah, yeah.
That word just resonated in a perfect way, and it completely like twists your understanding of the previous lines. And I love it when poetry does that, when there's that, like when you have that break and then everything turns upside down. And you do a lot of that here, and you do a lot of wonderful play with language and with sound, and it's just great. And I want to remind people, I screwed up a little bit. I put the wrong link initially, but the link to not pre-order, to purchase Unsongs is in the chat, and I put it up on Twitter. So
Oh, thank you, Will. I appreciate that.
Thank you so much, Gabriel.
Mhm.
Rudy, you're up next.
Okay, so
So
I'm
do
gonna.
you wanna, we published this today.
Yeah.
But do you want to provide some context, because today is April 30th, 2021, or apparently Goblinization Day.
It is. I'll just read
Okay.
what I wrote in the article. Well, what I copy pasted from the Shadowrun wiki in the text that we published today. So, from the Shadowrun wiki, Goblinization began on the 30th of April, 2021. On this day, many humans, approximately 10% of the world's population, without any evident reason, transformed into orcs and trolls and goblins. Shadowrun is an RPG game. I think they turned into a video game too, but it's mainly a tabletop RPG with a kind of cyberpunk flavor. So I guess in their world today, it was a really bad or a really good day, depending on how much you like to shoot goblins or get shot as a goblin. I guess I don't know. It was a day of consequence in the Shadowrun universe either way. All right, so this piece is called Goblinization. The Orc King. Coppers with a tractor beam pulled over the Orc King for driving at 224 miles per hour down I-210. License. A baton-wielding trooper can be heard on a video released to KTLA. And fucking registration. 4 coppers struck King with batons and kicks 39 times, each eliciting a painful squeal from the terrified Orc. Nothing was said of the 15 baton strikes that missed, whiffing harmlessly against the ground or presumably calloused Orc hide, hard as stag beetle carapace. These stray blows did nothing to further the narrative, which was one of combat, crunchy in the extreme, or counted in 3-second increments. The White Queen. Mackenzie Celine King, a 19-year-old college freshman, gained 250 pounds of straight prison bulk, bop, 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 in the time it took Phoebe Bridgers to sing about payphone ghosts and imposter syndrome. She was on a night drive. The shock, combined with super testosterone produced by her rapid descent into orcdom, resulted in her foot, swollen and immovable, becoming stuck on the accelerator. She was accosted by 4 LAPD officers who beat her savagely with batons. The Disney Corp stenographer drawing the court proceedings worked frantically to depict Miss King as both Belle and Beast. The final product was Degenerate, a photo bash of my daughter's face in the headlines, said King's mother Elspeth, a GPT-4 engineer, as she hustled across the checkerboard floors of the courthouse, avoiding the black spaces. Towing the line. Riots were well underway on a Friday afternoon as orcs, trolls, and everyone else galvanized by the King beating kicked holes through walls, police cars, and glass ceilings. A cadre of masked elves squinted through scopes, defending a place called Kim's Deep Dish Pizzeria as if it were Helm's Deep. Show them no mercy, for you will receive none. A wave of nausea crept over Tecumseh Sherman as she slipped into her new pair of Air Jordans, hopping on one foot to avoid the broken glass that was everywhere. Her 5 toes became 3. Up yours, Quentin. And her brother, Grant, gasped. Motherfuck, he said before tearing off around the corner. Cowabunga, man. Misty Kim's wave collapsed Friday night. Days ago, she was hanging 10 on a tsunami of serotonin, mostly due to a Yalta-like experience in front of her mirror where the big 3, eyes, brain, and mind, shook hands tenuously and admitted, fuck, you look decent. In a daring Monday raid, she had hit the thrift shop very hard, Anoxia, and copped fishnets, Doc Martens, plaid skirt, fucking works. Everything was fitting together in her life, but then nothing fit at all, and nothing was good, and she stared blankly into the vast nothing of the hereafter from her comfortably numb position, hanged, in the bedroom above her father's pizzeria, fishnets torn, tank top busting open, but like the wrong MCU character, Doc Martens sandals showing too much and not enough toe. According to her iTap, the last thing she saw was the mirror, where the landscape of her body was once scrutinized and divided by familiar tyrants. Reflected in it, a bloated, sunk-cost meat sack, and behind that, Bart Simpson, the revenant of recursive boyhood, matter-of-factly bursting from a poster saying, Cowabunga, man. And that's that.
God damn. I want, just in case anyone didn't click on the link here, I urge you to, because Rudy made a fantastic piece of art to accompany this piece.
This is sort of dedicated to Quentin Tarantino, I guess.
No, this is fantastic. I love this shit, man. You know I love this shit. There's so much going on here. There's so much playing around with concepts. There's so many subversions. You set so much shit up, and then you I don't know. You just, what I love about this piece is each one of these paragraphs sets up a bunch of preconceptions based on our understanding of culture or fantasy or whatever, and then over the course of that paragraph completely deconstructs and destroys all those preconceptions in a way that's really, really nasty and very, very funny. So yeah, man, I fucking love this shit.
Shadowrun is actually a really good setting. The game I don't know about. I've never played it, but I really do want to play a game in the Shadowrun universe because of like shit like this, like galvanization. That's just so brilliant. Like I mean that word, that is better than anything I could ever come up with. That's just so genius.
It really is. It really is. Yeah, well, I guess that's an open invitation then. If anyone here wants to run a Shadowrun campaign, Rudy at the very least will be attending. Yeah, thank you, man. So now, like, to continue our celebration of Goblinization Day, I guess I think I'm going to read a couple of games that I made years ago. So this first one, I guess, requires a little bit of setup. I'm going to try not to belabor it, and maybe Rudy can help me out with this. But there was this contest called it's a 200-word RPG contest, right, Rudy?
Yeah, this is from the infamous 200-word RPG contest. The guys that hate our freedom a lot.
And every year, Rudy would enter this contest and make like as many games as he possibly could. And every year he was like, hey man, come on, you got to make a 200-word RPG for this contest. And every year I was like, nah, man, these guys hate us anyway. They hate the work we do. I hate the work they do. I'm not going to do it. He'd be like,
that's for our freedom.
It's for fucking do it. And so every year I would say I wasn't going to, and then I'd think about it. And then I would always inevitably end up making a game as some kind of mean-spirited prank against the 200-word RPG contest. And every year I would always end up writing like a 500-word RPG or 600-word RPG, and then have to like cut half of the RPG out to make it fit. Anyway, so this is one I made a couple of years back, and it was way too long. But because like the theme was like, because of the theme, I cut it down into this like weird, like silly, like guttural monster speak voice. Anyway, I'm gonna read the contest version, and then I'm going to read the original unedited version. Okay, the game is called Bugbears. I think I remembered to put the, oh yeah, okay. Okay, contest version. You bugbear, bigger than human, stronger, but bugbears can't get shit together, can't cooperate, victimized by human, who work as one, even when many. This about to end. All bugbears gang up, plan revenge. Go in room, find trash can, dump on floor. Each pick through trash till find 3 things. Pick at same time, fight for what want. Each use garbage, craft God. This your fetish. Everyone tell story behind fetish. Tell what it is. Tell what is, how it part of you. Talk pain, talk sacredness, talk magic. When done, admire fetishes. Tell each other, how pretty, how cool. Now humankind pay. Make plans, do simple thing. Go supermarket, go bar. Must be outside where human dwell. While plot, remember fetish. If bugbear disrespect fetish, call out on bullshit. Hold fetish high. All others shut up until done scold. Scheme complete? Go out. Follow plan. Bring fetishes. Make sure humans see them. Be proud. If human ask about fetish, tell its story. Finish plan, return room. Congratulate all on victory. Give big hairy back pats. Brag. Don't forget fetishes. When all feel good about selves, return to dens. Or throw fetish back in trash can anytime. Become human. Leave room. Game forever. Okay, so here's the original version that I wrote. Bugbears, a game for monsters. You are a bugbear. You are bigger than any human and stronger, but bugbears can't seem to get their shit together. Since bugbears can't work with other bugbears, they are constantly being picked on, abused, and brutalized by humans, who have the uncanny ability to work as one, even when they are many. But this is about to end. All of the regional bugbears have been called to one place, and here they will plan their revenge. Step 1. Make your fetish. Gather all the players in one room. Find a full trash can and empty it in the center of the room. Use real trash. Each player picks through the trash until they find 2 or more objects that speak to them. Pick at the same time. Don't be afraid to fight for what you want. Then they use those objects and some basic craft supplies, markers, crayons, glue, glitter, whatever's on hand, to build their fetish. Fetishes can look however their creator desires, but must incorporate all of the trash grabbed. Step 2, recognize your fetish. Go around in a circle and give each bugbear a chance to tell the story behind their fetish. Talk about what your fetish is and why it's an important part of who you are. Talk about the pain you endured to acquire it. Talk about the way you and others must behave in its sacred presence. Talk about the mystical power your shirt possesses. Hold your fetish above your head as you speak. Once everyone has introduced their fetish, take a moment to compliment each other's fetishes. Leave no fetish unpraised. Step 3, plot. Now it's time to make humankind pay. Make plans to accomplish a mundane task as a group. This can be anything: grocery shopping, going to the movies, hitting the club, but it must involve going out in public. This game is probably harder to play now than it was 3 years ago when I made it. As you plan, be mindful of your fetish. Introduce it into the conversation whenever possible. Listen to others. If anyone disrespects your fetish, call them out on their bullshit and hold your fetish high while you do it. When someone's fetish is raised, everyone else must be silent. But if your hands are on your fetish, you must be talking about it. You can use it as a means to discuss other things, but it must be your central focus. If at any point a bugbear isn't touching their fetish, another bugbear may steal it if their hands are fast enough. If you've stolen a fetish, you can use it as your own, but keep in mind its history. You may hold up to 2 fetishes at a time, but remember that means you have to talk about both of them constantly. Of course, you can always put one or both down to return to the task at hand, but then you're liable to be robbed yourself. Step 4, execute. Once all the bugbears have agreed that their scheme is complete, it's time to put it into action. Go out and do the thing you discussed, sticking as closely to the plan as possible. Bring your fetishes with you and make sure they're displayed in a way that will allow anyone you encounter to see them. If any non-bugbear asks about your fetish, you must tell them its story. Once you've finished the thing you set out to do, and not a second earlier, return to the room where you started. Step 5, congratulate. Take turns praising each other on your victory over the humans. Go around the circle in the same order as before. Give yourselves a big, hairy pat on the back. Embellish your accomplishments, but don't forget your fetishes. All the old rules still apply. Whenever everyone feels sufficiently good about themselves, return to your dens. The game is over. At any point during play, a bugbear can throw their fetish back in the trash can. They instantly become human and must leave the room and the game immediately. Okay, that's that game. I'm going to read one more game that, oh shit, I'm going to let Unity back in the room first. I'm going to read one more game that also is kind of in the goblinization theme. Well, this one's, I guess, a little more serious, a little less slapstick. That Rudy and I published this collection called The Misery Index, like, God, 4 or 5 years ago now, full of like some of our little RPGs. And yeah, this one's called Passing. I need to find it. Okay. Passing, a simple role-playing game about vampires. The year, 1915. Jim Crow, excuse me, sorry, one second. Excuse me, sorry. The year, 1915. Jim Crow rules the American South. All of the progress towards racial equality made during Reconstruction has been undone by poll taxes, segregation, sharecropping, and intimidation. As the First World War spreads throughout Europe, resentment towards immigrants mixes with existing racial tensions. Ethnic paranoia is universal. All Germans are potential spies, and all foreigners are potential Germans. In Georgia, a Jewish factory manager, Leo Frank, is arrested for the rape and murder of a white teenager. There is little evidence of his guilt, but that doesn't prevent the jury from finding Frank guilty and sentencing him to hang. After Georgia's governor commutes his sentence to life imprisonment, an outraged mob breaks into the prison, shackles the warden with his own handcuffs, and abducts Frank. The mob hangs him from a tree and takes photographs. Postcards of the lynching are sold at Southern stores for 25 cents. D.W. Griffith's film, The Birth of a Nation, inspires the resurrection of the defunct Ku Klux Klan with its presentation of heroic Klansmen saving innocent whites from savage men in blackface. It becomes the first film screened in the White House, earning high praise from President Woodrow Wilson. Sundown towns spread throughout the South and West. Their name is inspired by one unequivocal rule. Only whites are allowed in town after the sun sets. The punishment for blacks and other non-whites who linger within the town limits at night is rarely stated but universally understood. For white expatriate writers and artists, it's the dawn of modernism. For black farmers in Mississippi, it's the dark ages. Okay. The scenario: in a sundown town in the Deep South, a group of local leaders, all white, all male, meets on Saturday nights to talk civics, play cards, and wax nostalgic about slavery. They are the informal town aristocracy. They plan business deals and church picnics. They investigate newcomers and see that the law is enforced. Normally, they would be talking about the price of tobacco and the lost honor of the Confederacy, but not recently, not since they found the first dead man. Now they are talking about bloodless corpses and the superstitious rumors spreading among the sharecroppers. Now they're talking about vampires. What these gentlemen do not know is that one of them is the vampire. What they also do not know is that one of them was born black and has been carefully keeping his secret to protect his position and his life. As suspicion grows, both of these men find it more and more difficult to maintain their facade. What you'll need to play: 4 or more players, a deck of cards with the jokers removed, and paper and pens or pencils. Character creation: give each player a pen or pencil and a sheet of paper. Search the deck for the card, search the deck of cards for the Ace of Hearts and the Ace of Spades and set them on the table, face down. Shuffle the deck. Deal a number of cards equal to the total number of players minus 2, face down from the top of the deck. If you have 5 players, deal 3 cards. If you have 4, deal 2, and so on. Take these cards out and lay them on top of the 2 aces without looking at them. Shuffle this stack and deal each player a card. That player should look at their card, but they should not show it to any of the other players. If you were dealt the Ace of Hearts, you are the vampire. Take a moment to think about your character. How old is he? Sorry. I should have made these pages. Oh, the pages are just really thick. Sorry. How old is he? Hundreds of years? Thousands? How long has he been living in the South? How did he rise to prominence in the community? I'm really tongue-tied, I apologize. How did he rise to prominence in the community? Why is he killing? Write a brief history of your life as a vampire on the back of your paper, taking caution to keep the other players from seeing. On the front of your paper, write some information about your life as a gentleman. This information can be true, or it can be a lie that you're using to protect your cover. Describe your role in the community, or your ancestors, or your high moral standards. If you were dealt the Ace of Spades, you are the Passé Blanc. You are a black man passing as white. Reflect on what your character has faced and how he rose to become a respected gentleman. Were his parents or grandparents born into slavery? What kind of prejudice has he experienced? How long has he been passing? How did he earn his social status? On the back of your paper, write a brief history of your character. Don't share this with the other players. On the front of your paper, write some details about your life that the other gentlemen would know. These details do not have to be true. They may be simply part of the story that your character has told to protect himself from scrutiny. If you were dealt any other card, you are a white Southern gentleman. You are not a supernatural monster or a racial minority, but you still have a secret to hide. Look at the suit of your card. If your card is a diamond, then your secret is about money. Maybe you embezzled funds from your hardware store. Maybe you are secretly broke. Maybe you have considerable gambling debts. Whatever you're hiding, it's related to your finances. If your card is a heart, then your secret is about love or lust. Maybe you have a mistress. Maybe your wife has made you a cuckold. Maybe you're having an affair with one of your sharecroppers. Whatever it is, it should be shameful enough to hide. If your card is a club, then your secret involves violence. Maybe you beat your wife. Maybe you abuse your sharecroppers or house servants. Maybe you killed a man in a duel. You might regret your behavior afterward, or you may feel justified, but however you feel, it would be best if no one else knew. If your card is a spade, then your secret involves family. Maybe your ancestors were poor indentured servants. Maybe your wife is the daughter of Irish immigrants. Maybe your son left home and married a black woman in Boston. Regardless of what you're hiding, it hurt your social status if it got out. Decide what you're hiding. Write your secret on the back of your paper. As with the other roles, keep this hidden from the other players for now. On the front of your paper, write some facts about your character. Unlike the other roles, this information should be true. You may have a secret to hide, but your whole life is not a lie. As with the other roles, focus on information the other characters would know. Details that establish your significance in the community. When all of the players have finished writing, take turns sharing what you've written on the front of your character sheet. This is public information. Your characters know these details about each other, and they are fair game to use in character during play. Do not share your true identity, your secret, or any of the other information on the back of your character sheet. Okay, smoke-filled room scenes. I apologize. This is a little longer than I thought it was, but I'll keep going, and there's not a huge amount left. Okay, smoke-filled room scenes. After each player has shared their character description, play begins. The game begins with a smoke-filled room scene. Smoke-filled room scenes depict a gathering of white Southern gentlemen, including the covert Passe Blanc and the incognito vampire. At the beginning of the first smoke-filled room scene, one player should set the deck of cards in the center of the table within easy reach of all the players. Smoke-filled room scenes are performed entirely in character. Each player acts out their role using the details they shared on the base as the basis for their character. Play is conversational, local gossip, and community events. Play is conversational, with the characters talking about current affairs, local gossip, and community events. The gentlemen might swap off-color jokes, rant about the decaying state of their country, or banter about politics. Early in the first scene, one character should introduce a rumor about the vampire. Start small. Maybe some livestock have died mysteriously, or perhaps an unidentified body has been found in the swamp outside of town. Some sharecroppers are spreading superstitious rumors that the deaths are unnatural. The gentlemen have reason to be skeptical, but nevertheless, this is their community, and they should look into it. Once the subject of the vampire has been introduced, the discussion should fluctuate between this new, disturbing topic and more mundane affairs. Don't dwell too completely on the vampire, particularly in the first smoke-filled room scene. The gentlemen are busy, after all, and they have a lot on their minds. As the game advances, the gentlemen should become increasingly obsessed with uncovering the vampire. As a result, each smoke-filled room scene should be more tightly focused on the vampire than the one before it, and the acts attributed to the vampire should become more gruesome and outlandish. During their conversation, the gentlemen should obliquely question or politely confront each other, either out of good-natured teasing, concealed suspicions, or social jockeying. They might point out a possible inconsistency in another gentleman's statement, ask them a probing question, or simply ask them to clarify a point. Whenever this happens, the player whose character is being confronted or questioned should draw a card from the deck without revealing it to the other players. If the suit of the card drawn matches the suit of the card they were dealt during the character creation, they should offer a weak or suspicious response. They might hesitate or stonewall or concoct an obvious lie or a weak excuse. It should be something that makes it transparently clear to the other players that you're not being entirely honest or forthcoming. If the suit of the card drawn does not match the suit of the card dealt during character creation, then the player should answer the question as they normally would, without acting suspiciously. Smoke-filled room scenes should end organically, with one player suggesting, in character, that the meeting be adjourned and the others agreeing if they feel they are ready to advance to the secret ballot. The secret ballot. After each smoke-filled room scene, the players vote on who they believe is the vampire. This vote is performed by secret ballot. Each player should write the name of the character that they believe to be the vampire on a scrap of paper, fold the paper, and place it in the center of the table. Players whose characters are under suspicion may not vote. More on that later. Once every participating player has voted, select one player to count the ballots. That player should read the name on each ballot aloud and announce which character has received the most votes. If there is a tie, the players should discuss their suspicions briefly, in character, and then perform another secret ballot. This should continue until one character has more votes than any other. Okay, interrogation scenes. Once the ballots have been counted, play advances to an interrogation scene. In interrogation scenes, the gentlemen confront the character who received the most votes during the secret ballot. This confrontation takes the form of an interrogation, where the suspected character is forcefully questioned by the other gentlemen. During the interrogation, the gentlemen should drop the pretense of civility and good humor displayed during the smoke-filled room scenes and become more direct and uncompromising in their questioning. They believe they have discovered the identity of the vampire and are anxious to see the truth revealed. The player being interrogated should feel free to deny that anything is unusual or avoid offering direct answers to the questions, drawing out the scene for as long as they feel is appropriate. However, the gentlemen should not relent or accept incomplete answers, persevering in their questioning. Ultimately, the scene will conclude in one of two ways. If the character being questioned is a true white Southern gentleman, they must break down and confess their secret. When this occurs, the player should share the information on the back of their character sheet with the other players. Once the secret is revealed, the scene ends. While the character must face the shame that the secret is out, he will encounter no long-term consequences. He is still a gentleman regardless of his indiscretions. He may participate in all future scenes and vote in future secret ballots. Once a white Southern gentleman confesses a secret, players may not vote for him in future secret ballots, and he cannot be the target of another interrogation scene. His player also no longer needs to draw a card when questioned during smoke-filled room scenes and may respond to all questions naturally. He no longer has anything to hide. If the character being questioned is the Passe Blanc, or the vampire, the character must flee the interrogation, refusing to answer any more questions or reveal their secret. The truth that they are hiding is simply too unacceptable to share, and the consequences would be too extreme. Once a character flees the interrogation, the scene ends, and that character is now under suspicion. They can still participate in future smoke-filled room scenes and ask questions in future interrogation scenes, but they can no longer vote in the secret ballot. Players also may not vote for a character that is under suspicion in future secret ballots, with the exception of the final ballot. After an interrogation scene ends, if no characters are under suspicion, begin a new smoke-filled room scene. If only one character is under suspicion, you should also begin a new smoke-filled room scene. If both the Passe Blanc and the vampire are under suspicion, advance to the final ballot. The final ballot. When the Passe Blanc and the vampire have fallen under suspicion, the final ballot begins. During the final ballot, The gentlemen will decide once and for all who they believe is the vampire. The final ballot is identical to previous secret ballots, except that the players must vote for one of the two characters who are currently under suspicion. They cannot vote for another white Southern gentleman, even if he has not yet been interrogated. The characters under suspicion may not participate in the final ballot, just as they cannot participate in other secret ballots. Once any ties have been broken and one character has received a majority of the votes cast, play moves on to the exorcism. The exorcism. In the exorcism, the gentlemen confront and kill the character they believe to be the vampire. In reality, this may be the real vampire, or it may be the Passé Blanc. This scene is more flexible than its predecessors. Players should feel free to mold it to their tastes and sensibilities. It can be dramatically performed with action and dialogue, or simply described through narration. Regardless of how the scene is executed, it will involve the character who received the most votes in the final ballot being confronted and killed by the other characters, including the other character who was under suspicion. The particulars of the murder are up to the players to decide, but the scene should imply both a traditional ritual to destroy a vampire, such as incineration, decapitation, or staking, and the ugly heritage of the Southern lynch mob. This is a moment for the white Southern gentlemen to reveal their hidden fears and frustrations, to use the destruction of the perceived vampire to purge their violent anxieties about a changing world. They might yell and scream at their victim, or maybe they force him to undress and tar and feather or otherwise humiliate him. Whatever they do, they are asserting their dominance over their victim.
Can I ask you one question?
Oh, sorry about that. Whatever they do, they are asserting their dominance over their victim and reminding him of their supremacy. Once their victim has been killed, the game concludes with one of two possible outcomes. If the vampire was destroyed, the vampire's players should share the secret history written on the back of their character sheet with the other players. This should take the form of a final monologue detailing the vampire's exploits and origins. Feel free to ham it up in classic B-movie style. Sneer and flaunt your power, make threats, wallow in the melodrama. Let the gentleman know exactly what you are, what you've done, and what you are capable of. If the Passé Blanc was murdered, his players should share the tragic history written on the back of his character sheet. Let the other players know what indignities he suffered during his life, how he built a life for himself, and how he kept his secret. Don't be too maudlin. The situation will lend potency to his story without the need for excessive dramatic flourishes. Once the victim finishes their monologue, the game is over. There is no epilogue, and each player can imagine for themselves how the events may have or may not have changed their character. Win conditions. If a white Southern gentleman finishes the game without being forced to reveal his secret, he wins, regardless of whether the vampire or Passé Blanc was killed. If the vampire manages to convince the white Southern gentleman to murder the Passé Blanc, or if this happens without his interference and he survives by sheer fucking luck, he wins. If the vampire is destroyed and the Passé Blanc lives, then the Passé Blanc doesn't lose and he doesn't win. He simply survives. That's it. Yeah, done with that. Sorry, that was a lot longer than I expected it to be. So anyway, moving on now, we can do the open mic. If anyone, I don't know if Rudy, has anyone put in the chat that they want to read during the open mic?
I haven't seen anybody put into here yet, but if
I've got
you
something.
want to get.
Oh, Griffin has something?
Yeah.
Okay. While Griffin's reading, if anyone does have anything they want to read, just say so in the chat. It's all yours, Griffin.
This is a story from Yonk issue 4, which is coming out momentarily.
Shit, that's
Midnight
tomorrow, isn't it?
Eastern tonight, probably-ish. Sometime tomorrow, definitely. This is his head just did that. A piece that I wrote using AI Dungeon. So, you are John F. Kennedy, the President of the United States. It's a cool fall day in Dallas, Texas on November 11th, 1963. You're at the University of Texas, where you were speaking to students about the need for unity and peace when an assassin named Lee Harvey Oswald shoots your brother Bobby in the back as he is leaving church. You duck to the side behind a group of Secret Service agents. A shot rings out, hitting you in the chest. The bullet passes through your body and lodges itself in a tree nearby. You collapse to the ground, bleeding from your chest wound. You struggle to catch your breath, but you manage to shout to the people around you, "I've been shot." People rush to your aid, but you are bleeding internally and the wound is mortal. You fall unconscious from blood loss and awaken in a bare white room. You've been brought out of the hospital and into the very heart of darkness. Your time has come. A man stands in the room, wearing a black overcoat and a black hat. "Who are you?" You feel your chest, and your hand comes away bloody. The breathing tube is gone. The man smiles, revealing rotten teeth. "I am your god tonight, mortal." He strides forward with unnatural speed and bashes your head in with a metal weight. The pain is unbearable. He swings again, and again, and again. You try to scream, but only a gargling noise comes out as blood fills your throat. You manage to say, "Why?" before he finishes you off with another brutal blow. You collapse onto the ground, the weight of your skull crushing your brain. You lose consciousness again and awaken in darkness. You can hear sobbing. "Why?" Your sister, Rose, stands over you, her eyes red and puffy from crying. "Why did this have to happen? I loved him. You try to speak, but your mouth will not move. You make the tiniest nod of your head, which causes her to sigh in relief. "Don't try to speak. The bleeding on the brain is very bad, but..." You notice movement behind her, the man in black with the rotten smile. "He's watching us," you whisper. Rose turns around, shrieking. The man grabs her and holds a knife to her throat. "Silencio," he snarls. You can't cry out. You don't know if anyone would come to help. Even if they did, the man was incredibly strong. You could see that even in your fragile state. The man slices open her throat and Rose collapses to the ground, her life's blood pouring into the ground. She dies there as the man smiles. His eyes never leave yours. You see her die, but you don't feel the pain. You've had years of practice with that. Instead, you are filled with rage at this man, at yourself, at the world. You try to stand up, to attack, to rage. You see the blow land, but the man moves with unnatural speed. His hand clamps down on your wrist, and he presses a gun to your head. "Shh," he says, his lips pressed up against your cheek. "No more tears." The world fades away. You awaken on a bed. You are in a small room painted a depressing gray. There's a portrait hanging on the opposite wall. You turn your head and see yourself on the canvas. Your arms are raised in surrender, your expression one of agony. You never sat for this portrait, but you think you know the artist. You lie in bed staring at the portrait. Your whole body aches and you feel cold all over. The events of the night flood back into your mind. The man with the rotten smile, the portrait. He painted it while you were passed out, perhaps. He painted it after he killed her. You look away from the portrait and at the ground. There is a bucket there. In it, you see chunks of dirty ice. You reach for the bucket, but your arms are tied down. You call out for help, but there is no response. The only sound is the quiet shuffling of feet in the next room. You try to focus on the pain, to block it out, to think. You wish you had a mirror. You need to see what you look like. There is a rapping on the door. "Hush, child," a voice says. "All in good time." The rapping resumes. "Who's there?" The door opens. It's not the man this time, it's a woman in the same black hat and coat. You're too tired to be scared. She looks at you, smiling. "Have we met, Mother?" No, child, but we shall meet soon. She's carrying a cup of water and presses it to your lips. Drink. You gulp it down, but it tastes awful. The woman is still smiling at you. Your stomach hurts as if someone shot you. The water was poisoned. The woman leans in close. I like you, Hazel. You're going to be so fun to break. The pain is overwhelming. Your eyes begin to itch as you try to blink away the tears. I'm John, not Hazel. She smiles. I know. She strokes her hair and it feels so nice. The water was bad, but the kindness is good. You don't want it to stop. Your vision starts to fade as the pain moves up from your stomach into your heart. You're going to die here. I'm sorry, child, but you are stronger than he is. You have more will than he has. You can take this punishment, if only for a little while. I can't. I'll die. The pain is in your throat now. It's hard to breathe. She smiles, and it's not a nice smile. She's close enough to smell her breath, as rotten as her teeth. Yes, you will. She steps back and you lose your sight. You can't see anything anymore. You hear her leave the room. You hear her footsteps fade away into the distance. You die again. This time you wake up in your own bedroom, your wife beside you. She holds your hand. You're not dead. You sit up in bed, taking a deep breath. The pain shoots through your chest, but you manage to stay conscious. You wonder how long you've been asleep. You look at your wife and she smiles. Her teeth. The smell hits you suddenly and you choke. The water tasted bad, but it was poison. That's what she used to kill her. Your head starts to hurt and your throat burns. Your wife is one of them. They're everywhere, the people with the rotten teeth. They're going to kill you, but you don't care. You'll die before you let them take your mind. You have something better than that stupid painting. You have knowledge. You know the secrets they tried to keep. About angels and about devils. You know what the other one looks like. You don't want to die, but it doesn't matter. You go peacefully in your sleep. Your wife has a knife. She raises it to your throat. You don't fear it. Death is peaceful. She presses the knife to your throat, but she doesn't cut you. You feel the tip of the blade on your skin, but it doesn't hurt. Do it, you say. I know what you are. She pauses, and the knife-sharp blade presses harder on your skin. Are you sure, she asks. Yes, you reply. I'm sure. The blade sinks in, slicing through your veins and arteries like butter. I'm sorry, you whisper, as the world goes dark. You float upwards out of your body. You can see yourself lying on the bed, a body that no longer contains a mind. Your lips turn upwards into a smile. You've escaped it. You're free. Then you feel a tug, a yanking at your navel. You look down and your eyes land on the cord. You watch yourself hold on to it. Your fingers wrapped around the plastic like a vice. You can't let go. It pulls you through the walls until you end up at the Oval Office. You find yourself face to face with a man. He has dark, patchy hair and a thin mustache. He looks at you and smiles. Hello, he says, extending a hand towards you. His teeth are perfect and white. You shake his hand. I'm Steve, he says, the man with one job. You look around but see no one else. Where's the other guy, you ask. Gone, he says, grinning that perfect grin. And he won't be back to bother you. What job? He looks at you confused before grinning once again. I don't like to explain my work to anyone, he says, but I'm the only one who can save the world. You nod. From the Russians? He shakes his head. From ourselves, he says. I'm the only one who can control the devil. You look around once again. Where's the other guy? Gone, he says with a knowing smile, and he won't be back to bother you. You nod, but worry for his absence. Something is very wrong here. You look at the man once again. He grins and reaches into his mouth. The perfect teeth come out one by one. He smiles as he holds up 10 fanged teeth, each as sharp as a dagger. I am the wolf, he says. He presses the teeth into your palm. They sizzle slightly as they enter your skin. Beware the pack, he says, grinning. I am the alpha. You are not my enemy. He leans forward, his lips nearly touching yours. You step backwards, gazing at the teeth in your hand. You grip the cord with your other hand, knowing that if you let go, you'll be infected. Who are you? He grins, his fangs seeming to pierce your skin. The teeth sink deeper and disappear. You can feel them moving under your skin. The man with one job, he whispers, grinning. The man who can save the world. What about the man with rotten teeth, you ask? He smiles, the sides of his mouth stretching upwards. He runs his tongue along the fangs, making them flash in the sun. He has more rows of teeth behind them, like a shark. He'll be back to bother you too, he says. You step backwards once more, still gripping the cord. The man grins, revealing a mouth of rows of razor teeth. He grabs the cord and lifts it to his mouth. He growls, the cord cutting into your hands. He'll be back to bite your head off, he says. Beware the pack. He leans forward, his eyes burning into yours. He sinks his teeth into the cord and you feel it in your stomach. The tugging stops and you're falling. You tumble from the bed, smacking into the floor. You scream as your skin burns and tears. Your wife rolls out of bed and holds you. What was that? You shake your head, trying to rid yourself of the cord. It burns as it snakes through your skin. You can feel his teeth inside you, fighting with the cord. It bites into your flesh, and you scream. You look at the man once again, but he's gone. You're in the bedroom once again. You hold your stomach, blood seeping through your fingers. Oh my God! Your wife stares at the blood. John, what happened? You look around the room, but he's gone. The wolf is here. You can feel him, his aura. It's burning against your chest. The wolf is hungry. His teeth are in your mouth. You stare at your wife's neck. You can see the gap between her collarbone and the torn skin. You can see the glistening of her blood under her chest. You can see the cord that snakes under her skin. You bite down, trying to rip out the cord. It's in your mouth like a rag. It burns as you try to pull it free, blood bursting out in your throat. You find yourself leaning against the counter, feeling the wolf's dominance. She screams. You taste her flesh. You try to shake off the cord, but you can't move. You're a sitting duck. The wolf looks at you. You want to run, but you can't even breathe. He steps closer. He smells of wood and rot. He looks at you, his deep eyes burning into your soul. You're a prisoner. He leans forward and runs his tongue along your cheek. You can't move. Your wife is dead. You're dead. Only the wolf is alive. You stare at him. He stares back. The world seems to stop. Time seems to slow down. His bright eyes burn into your soul. You can't look away. Then he's gone. You're back in Dallas. The sunlight pours into the room and you slowly open your eyes. You lie in bed, feet soaked with sweat. You gasp for breath as memories flood back. A nightmare. That's all it was. You quickly dash into the bathroom and throw up. You stare at yourself in the mirror. You have deep bags under your eyes, your skin is pale and you're usually exhausted. You're not a young man anymore. You look into the bowl before you flush. There are 10 bright fangs in a pool of red. You cringe at it and flush it down the toilet. A sharp scream splits the air. You turn to find your wife. She's holding a finger to her lips, a pained look on her face. Who's screaming? You whisper, suddenly terrified. It was me, she sighed. I keep having the same nightmare. Do you need help sleeping? What? No, she sighs. Please, Jackie, you can talk to me. You hold out your hands. I'm here for you. Thank you, she says. I just need to sleep it off, I guess. She turns and heads to the living room. You look in the mirror and freeze. The wolf is behind your right shoulder and the man with the rotten teeth behind your left. You turn and look at them. The man is small, but the wolf is huge. Its fangs are twice as long as your arm and its eyes are pure red. The man with rotten teeth doesn't fear the wolf. He leans forward. Look at the fangs, boy. You look down. The wolf's mouth is open, revealing 2 rows of dagger-like teeth. Do you see what he's hiding? You feel your arm moving. Your fingers stroke the fangs and reach back into the wolf's mouth. You feel a tongue against your fingers, slick with saliva. No, I can't see anything. See for yourself. You reach forward and lift the tail. You push the scales away from your eyes and stare at the beast within. The wolf's mouth gapes wide, revealing hundreds of teeth. Reach deeper, your elbow deep now, your hand down its throat. You reach up and touch the fangs, touching the rough edges. You reach into the throat, feeling the windpipe and the structures that would allow the creature to breathe. Then your hand closes on something hard. You pull your palm out, feeling blood on your hand. You look at your palm and find a dagger buried deep in your skin. Pierces through your hand and drips with crimson blood. You draw it out with the other hand. Its blade is engraved with a portrait, a perfect likeness of the wolf's head. The handle is wrapped in leather and a large steel pommel rests at the top. You pull it out and hold your bleeding hand. The man with rotten teeth rests his hand on the wolf's back. This is Fenrir, the wolf of Fenrir. You kneel down, opening the wolf's mouth and plunging the dagger into its throat. You twist it, crushing the creature's windpipe. The man laughs. Good job. You stand, feeling lightheaded. The man laughs. Don't worry, he won't kill you. You stand and stagger forward. You plunge the knife down into the man's eye. His eye bulges and a torrent of crimson bursts forth. You twist the knife, hacking the eye off and throwing it across the room. You turn and run. Your wife is waiting for you in the living room. She wraps her arms around you. I'm sorry, honey. I'm so sorry. It's okay. I'm okay. No, no, no. Her hands fly to her mouth. I'm fine. It's done. She leads you to the couch. Come on, let's watch TV for a while. You sit down and hold her hand. I love you. I love you too. You lie back on the couch and stare at the ceiling. In your nightmares, you can still hear him laughing. Okay, sorry, that was way longer than I remembered.
No, that's awesome. So you used AI Dungeon to generate that?
Yeah, so I was helping it along, but probably more than half of that text was generated.
Wow.
It kept trying to write werewolf porn. There were like 2 or 3 places where I had to undo stuff to not get werewolf porn.
I'm amazed that was generated. That's fucking incredible. I figured you wrote that.
That is, yeah, that's fucking wild. How much did you feed it, and what did you
So it works like a text adventure. So it'll you feed it a starting prompt. I fed it the first sentence. And then it'll basically do like call and response almost. Like it says a couple sentences, you write a couple sentences. But there were big chunks where I just kept hitting enter and letting it write. But I don't remember. It was a few months ago.
Right. That's fucking incredible. And it, while you were reading that, how long did this process take?
Couple hours.
Can you imagine using that?
Yeah, you could generate it. You can generate a lot of text very quickly.
I'm just thinking about like spamming the New Yorker or the Paris Review with thousands of AI generated submissions. Like because
Bingo. Yep, that's what I was thinking too.
Because like Jesus, like you could really fuck up some of these institutional publications. Like some dude's working the slush pile and 50% of it is AI generated. Holy shit, that
was awesome, and I love how detailed that got, like it with the wolf's like anatomy and physiology. I guess that was really something.
William, the Paris Review is actually good. So
I have nothing against,
because the New Yorker fucking sucks. Whenever I see some bitch with like I mean that in a non-gendered way, so I'm referring to men and women with a with a New Yorker tote. I'm like, really? You like the New Yorker? Who's your favorite New Yorker writer? Like, really? They publish Murakami, like, that's every issue. It's boring. Paris Review published Bud Smith. They've kind of touched on some of these indie communities. So anyways,
I don't have anything really against the parents.
And they let Tyrant Books write. No, I know. I'm just sorry. That's besides the point.
No, it's okay, Josh. I just have something against institutional publications in general. I love the idea of pulling some prank like that on one of them. And anyway, thank you, Josh.
I totally forgot also that I was doing this in front of Lee Harvey Oswald getting shot.
By the way,
sorry.
My ex just emailed my employer like on a Friday night, CCing me and the head of HR. Just by the way, that's like, sorry, that's just like, yeah, wow. Anyways,
Josh, just so you know, we're still recording.
That's fine. No, that's fine. No, I want it out there. I haven't done anything wrong. Anyways.
Okay. Well, thank you, Josh, for your impassioned defense of the Paris Review. I think.
Sorry, Gabriel, you were saying something?
I was just going to ask: is that AI process that you did for that piece the same as our friend Zoe that shows up sometimes that does kind of strictly that? Stuff?
Yeah.
I'm just really impressed because your piece. I love Zoe's stuff. Don't get me wrong, but your piece was seemed completely linear. And
it really depends what you feed into it. And I definitely helped it along more than I think. Zoe usually just lets it run.
Okay. I gotta have you guys teach me how to do this. It's really exciting. Yeah, not that I'm gonna go.
You go to AIDungeon.io and then you click on custom and then you start typing.
I don't see myself
really simple.
writing like this, but I'm just super curious with the process. It's super fascinating.
Yeah, I don't. When I do AI assisted stuff, it's mostly visual art.
That's cool.
I've been posting a lot of on Twitter. But I decided to give literature a try, and then it created werewolf, JFK, psychological horror. So
that's awesome. Yeah, totally. It was like right out of an Elroy book. It's fucking awesome.
Yeah, and I love how it just kept returning to the same scenes and themes in a really wildly subconscious dreamlike way. That's fucking, I don't know. I've got to play around with this shit.
Yeah, you can also just play it like a text adventure, Zork or whatever, but it's infinitely creates itself.
A while ago, I was playing around with predictive text. This guy, Jamie Brew, who writes for Clickhole, had this blog called Object Dreams, I think. And it was a bunch of Yelp reviews and generic pieces of text that you would find on the internet, but written with a predictive text editor. So I got a hold of he put the software he was using on GitHub, and I got a hold of it and played around with that, and that was a lot of fun. I wrote like a suicide note using it or something, and I think it's on Misery Tourism. Maybe I'll read that sometime. But I'm really fascinated by AI generated and predictive text shit. So yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I think especially if you use it as an experimenting with strain writing, maybe, or as a I don't know. You play around just with the format of it, because I don't want to write something with help from an AI and try and pass it off as my original work. That feels that feels like cheating. But especially for a small chunk within a larger work, or something that needs that slightly off, you can sort of tell which bits are the AIs because they're the bits that are non sequiturs or are stilted grammar or repetitive.
Right. Yeah, definitely. No, it's really fascinating shit. Thank you so much, Griffin. Gabriel, you had sent me, actually, Rudy, just to check, did you catch anyone who wanted to read?
I didn't catch anyone.
Okay. Gabriel, you had sent me a PM saying you wanted to read. Do you want me to share the link you sent, or do you want this?
I think that'd be helpful.
Okay, sure.
For people to read along. So since it's the last day of National Poetry Month, this was kind of a last minute decision, but I thought I would share a piece. It's someone else's work, but it's the only time I've ever like really brought the house down at a poetry reading. I just recited this work, and everyone lost their fucking minds and couldn't stop laughing and almost to tears. So I'm gonna read the work from it's called Just Fishin' from pop country superstar Trace Adkins. And I guess the thesis here is when you take something out of context, it can completely lose its intended meaning, and kind of take a more sinister edge. And I guess the sub thesis here is that there's in contemporary pop country, there's actually no poetry in it. It's like it's so deliberate. I've found that it's so deliberate that there's no I guess just when you read this, just think like, what maniac could have greenlit this song for Trace Adkins? It was a #1 hit in 2011 about spending quality time with his daughter. And let's just go ahead. And I feel horrible. I'm taking a horrible spin on this, but I guarantee the rest of you will, so you're all going to hell with me. I'm lost in her there, holding that pink rod and reel. She's doing almost everything but sitting still. Talking about her ballet shoes and training wheels and her kittens, and she thinks we're just fishing. I say, Daddy loves you, baby, one more time. She says, I know, I think I got a bite. And all this laughing, crying, smiling, dying here's inside is what I call living. And she thinks we're just fishing on the riverside, throwing back what we could fry, drowning worms and killing time, nothing too ambitious. But she ain't even thinking about what's really going on right now. But I guarantee this memory's a biggin', and she thinks we're just fishing. She's already pretty like her mama is, gonna drive the boys all crazy, give her daddy fits. And I better do this every chance I get, 'cause time is ticking. Yeah, it is. And she thinks we're just fishing on the riverside, throwing back what we could fry, drowning worms and killing time, nothing too ambitious. She ain't even thinking about what's really going on right now, but I guarantee this memory's a biggin', and she thinks we're just fishing. She ain't even thinking about what's really going on right now, but I guarantee this memory's a biggin', and she thinks we're just fishing. Yeah, she thinks we're just fishing. We ain't only fishing. This ain't about fishing.
History's greatest monster.
Oh my God!
Wow.
Now, granted,
Holy
like
shit.
that was your delivery, but I don't know if I had just read those lyrics, if I could have seen it any other way.
Yeah, no, it's insane.
Yeah.
It's so insane. Like who?
How?
And I did a search before I read it at this poetry reading years ago, and there's nothing online about the weird double entendres or anything like that, and that
Wow.
just freaked me out even more. You know what I mean? It's just like,
I mean, holy shit! Like,
yeah.
even even if there isn't an entire verse dedicated to how hot she already is. Like, even without that, it's fucking creepy. But with that in there, I mean, like, fucking, they should have given fucking Humbert a writing credit.
It fucking
Yeah, there was
starts off.
a moment, maybe like, well, I'm sorry, what?
It starts off with her gripping a pink rod, like.
Yeah, no,
Jesus
it's
Christ.
insane. Like, you literally can't make this shit up. I mean, he's obviously trying, talking about her fishing pole, but like, fuck, man, like maybe run it by a couple eyes before, you make it a #1 hit. But the fact that it was a #1 hit, it's like, I mean, I think, with all the major chords behind it, it's, it's like an exalted feeling. But yeah, it's totally it's totally insane. Yeah, there was 5 years ago I was obsessed with contemporary pop country, more of just like an anthropological study, like just everyone, a lot of those guys aren't even playing their guitars, they're like prop guitars, and just all the shameless product placement in the songs and stuff. I'm a big country fan, but yeah, just that stuff's insane. And Trace Adkins is hilarious because he takes himself so seriously. Like around the time that song came out, he was on a cruise ship, and he was 10 years sober, I think. And he was on a cruise ship, and there just happened to be a Trace Adkins impersonator performing, and he got so pissed. He got so pissed that he went behind the bar and grabbed a bottle of tequila and just downed it and beat the shit out of the guy. So yeah, there's some serious disconnect happening over there.
I mean, he'll rock you steady, rough and ready, right? Gun rack, gun rack, ball cap, skull ring, Wranglers, something like that. Trace Adkins has some pretty hilarious, like, fucking ridiculous lyrics.
If this guy is a known asshole, I have to wonder about the people who wrote this for him, and if they weren't just trying to get one over on him.
I know.
Yeah.
Yeah, pop music has a big history of that. I feel like I channeled Brandon Norcross on that song, so I feel like I have to tip my hat to him.
Yeah, when you mentioned this a couple of weeks ago to me, I knew I couldn't do this justice, but holy fuck.
Yeah.
That has all the subtlety of every other country song, which is about equal to a pickup truck driving through the front window of a gun store.
Right.
Under a water tower, don't forget.
Yes,
I can write
under
a
a water
country song
tower.
about a pickup truck driving through the front window of a gun store. That sounds great.
I've actually been on a huge country kick lately. I don't know, this whole year I've been listening to like a fucking ton, not like this stuff, but more like, I don't know, like outlaw country and alt country and shit. And I don't know what it is. Something, I guess, like I turned 35 and some laden like white trash gene in my brain just activated.
Yeah, no, it's getting older. That's what happens.
I've been listening to Jello Biafra of the Dead Kennedys did a country album called Prairie Home Invasion, and it is incredible.
Damn.
Jello has not he had a side project recently. He's so good that was called the Guantanamo School of Medicine.
Yeah.
Just everything he does, he's so good. He hasn't lost it, and even when he does, I think he did some he did an album with DOA a while back. Just he hasn't lost it. It's such a shame that Dead Kennedys were such little bitches, because I don't know who would go see them without him, but he's just consistently so good. But I hadn't heard about that Griffin, so I'm gonna check the country album.
Jello Biafra, I've spent some time with him. We have some mutual friends and stuff, and I was up till 4 a.m. with him one time at this deli in LA. And the thing with Jello, he just doesn't, like, who you see on stage, he doesn't fall out of that character. That's exactly who he is. It's like a lot.
Have
a lot to handle.
Have you seen him on Oprah?
No.
He was with Tipper Gore when the censor.
Oh yeah. I think I remember that.
So good. He's so articulate. And then she says, "I didn't say that." And he's like, "Oh, really?" And he pulls out a newspaper and says, and I quote, and he quotes her. And it's pretty good.
Yeah, he's great. He's just such a fucking handful. Like off stage, it's just like he's on a soapbox like the whole fucking time. It's so funny.
Sorry, excuse me. Rudy, did I miss someone in the chat? Did anyone else have anything they wanted to read?
I believe Josh wants to read something, but afterwards, I guess.
Oh, after we close the or after we stop recording?
Yeah.
Okay. Does anyone have anything they want to read while we're still recording?
I can finish up with something.
Yeah, Rudy, why don't you close out the night for us here?
If nobody else wants to read, that is. Okay, so just on the theme of goblinization and transformation, I guess, which was kind of a theme of like the last story there that I read, part of the goblinization shit. I'll just link to a 200-word RPG contest game that I read this probably once a year or so. I know Gene Judas likes this one, but I think I'll read it tonight. This game is a 200-word RPG called Chiseled: A Ghost Story. Most players are revolutionary scientists creating the militantly post-gender regime's homebody, a compulsory replacement for the disgusting, aesthetically bankrupt human figure. One player is the ghost of gender itself. Boo. Pre-game. Everyone needs Skypeable, concealable, portable devices. Scientists use earbuds, enable Skype's answer incoming calls automatically option. Agree on start time. Gender, exit play space, go elsewhere. Place a toy gun somewhere conspicuous. Acquire Play-Doh. At established start time, start a 15-minute timer. Scientists, do your best to sculpt a gender-free homebody prototype using Play-Doh. Homebodies must be, choose 3 of these pre-game, maneuverable, durable, spacefaring, aesthetic, brutalist, minimalist, etc., emotive, reproductive. Discuss, design, justify. Gender. To possess individual scientists, Skype them and speak. Direct their speech, sculpting. Force gender into the design process, sculpture. Possessed. You are only possessed while you can hear gender speaking. Obey gender. Never. Discuss your possession. Destroy the sculpture. Scientists. If everyone points to the same suspected possessed and says something about their dubious revolutionary history, load the gun. Holds 1 bullet. Begins empty. Kill possessed. Aim gun at them. Shout bang to silence gender. Dead scientist. Leave. Slain possessed. Inform gender via Skype. They're done playing. After 15 minutes, upload sculpture to social media. Invite assessment. Did you fulfill the regime's mandate? And that's it.
Banned from the 200-word RPG contest.
Banned.
All right, thank you, Rudy. All right, guys. On that note, I think we're going to close it up tonight. As usual, I'll keep the Zoom window open for a while, but I'm going to end the recording now. If you were watching this on YouTube, this has been Misery Loves Company, a weekly social reading series. If you'd like to participate, follow us at Misery Tourism on Twitter. We tweet out the link every week. This happens, as I said at the start, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 5 p.m. Pacific. All right, fuck it. We're done. Thank you, everyone.